Good afternoon, everyone. So happy to have you join us today on today's Uncut Thread session. Today, we'll be talking about sourcing with conscious. So we will be discussing the ethical sourcing of African fabric and whether or not we decide if we would purchase um, low prioritize low price or ethical sourcing. So we have four guests with us today, and we're going to get started. Our first guest is Sharice Batten, and we're so happy to have you join us today. So you can just share a little bit about yourself, and we'll get going.
So, good afternoon, and I'm joining you from Berkeley, California, in the United States, San Francisco Bay Area. My story is that my grandmother was very creative with her hands, and my father was a painter, her son. So, I was introduced to sewing and handwork, crocheting, tatting. My aunt taught me how to sew garments and so I started making my own clothes when I was a kid, and I enjoyed all of this. And then life got in the way. I went to college, got married, had four kids, became a teacher and a school principal, and didn't pick up a needle or anything. I was just surviving and thriving. And when I retired, I decided to look into quilting, which was not something that my family had done. So I took a couple of classes because I wanted to make quilts for my grandchildren, and those were traditional classes. But because there's this part of me that wants to be more creative or just unbridled, I was searching on this path to see what I could do artistically with quilts. I was fortunate to take a trip to Botswana and Zimbabwe. And we were going through a town, and there was an open market. And I wanted to say to the driver, stop, stop. I have to get out. I have to go to these fabric. They were just these vendors with all these different wax prints and colors, and I was just taking pictures through the window, and then he stopped and we got out. So I bought fabric back from those places, and I started like doing collage quilts with it, and I wanted to source fabrics locally. So, national chain, Joann's was a fabric store near us. There were local one owner fabric stores. And so I would go in and I would ask them about their African fabrics, and they would send me to their quote ethnic section. And so I was like excited, and not knowing what I know now, I realized that these were not authentic wax prints. And it wasn't until so my point is that I did use them, and there's a slide that will show what I created with the prints and bazine that I got in Zimbabwe, but also what I used from local sources. And there's some bazine in here, and then the dark purple is a fabric that I brought back from Zimbabwe. But the in the middle, where it's like this is from a photo that I took of a sunset when I was there, so that it was inspired by a photo. And you can see that the fabric in the middle is I don't know if you can tell, but I learned that those are not authentic prints, even though they were sold as authentic African prints. So the challenge for me is that I don't want to create other pieces anymore that are not representative of authenticity. I want to support local artisans. I want to, I want to, I just want to be more authentic in this world. So I liked the quilt, but it doesn't bring me the joy that that I initially had because of those reasons. My son and the grandkids live in Washington D.C., and I did find it was so great. In their garment district, they have fabric stores, and I was able to find fabrics just by following the accents and the busyness and the bargaining. I said, "What's going on in these stores?" And I walk in, and they're they're people from different countries in Africa who are buying 15-yard bolts and bargaining all over the place to lower the price. And I said, oh my gosh, this is where, when I come to DC, this is where I will buy my fabric. But fortunately, online, I found Quilt Africa Fabrics, and so I've learned so much about how the fabrics are made, how they are dyed, how they and it's important to me, like I said, to support local artists who are doing this, creating these fabulous prints and colors. So that's my story.
Well, thank you. Appreciate you sharing with us that you've learned from your experience with this particular piece that you did, which is beautiful, by the way. And even though some of us might not recognize the fact that they weren't authentic prints, you realized it once you understood the difference. And now going forward, you feel as though this is something that, that's important to you. So
Yes, it was one of those quilt out. I joined the Block of the Month about 3 years ago, and it was in one of those conversations where I realized that the pattern is on both sides of the fabric. I mean, it's kind of a simple thing, but so I go into my stash and I start looking at all these quote African prints that are not printed on both sides. One side is lighter or white or whatever. So, it's so now buyer beware. As they say, better, you do better. So, yeah.
Exactly, exactly. That's my exact sentiments as well. And thank you for sharing that with us, Sharice. We appreciate your insight to, what you've learned. And life is a journey, and so we learn as we go along. And that'll take me to myself, who I was pretty much in the same kind of predicament as far as understanding, low price versus ethical, in which, it's a heavy topic. And I'm going to speak on what I've learned along my journey. I've been quilting for about 12, 13 years now. Started out with garment sewing, and then I started quilting, and I enjoy it. And so that's pretty much where I am with that. But this slide here, I just wanted to show that these prints that are low price and they're not authentic fabrics. And sometimes you want to buy them and you think that they are, but then you find out that they aren't, because like you said, with the fabric is not you don't see the on both sides. And you can buy them from big box stores, and they label them as being African print fabrics, but they in fact aren't. So it's the quality that, once you get it, you realize the quality of it is not authentic fabric. And so we don't know where it comes from. It's mass produced and whatnot. And that's not to disparage anybody who necessarily can't afford. You do what you can, and you just move through life that way. You do the best that you can and prioritize what's important to you. But this was just an example of non-authentic fabrics. And this slide here shows this piece with the yellow sunburst. Also, to the salvage, it and the feel of it is not good quality. I was gifted some of these fabrics that I have, the other one of the other ones, and this one here with the on the selvage. So I don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Somebody gave it to me, and so I've used it, but I definitely can feel and know the difference now. As you said, when you know better, you do better. So going forward, it's always better to purchase good quality fabric from a good source and from a reputable source. And you know that your fabric is good quality, and preferably the quality wherever you get it from. Quilt Africa Fabric is a fine place to get it from, of course. That it's sourced properly and it's good quality. So I just wanted to show the difference between the two selvages. And this is another example of fabric that was gifted to me here with the selvage that is not good quality. I don't know if it was supposed to be cotton or not, but it's more like a linen feel, but not good quality. Whereas this one here that I've purchased, and it's a good quality fabric. So I just wanted to show this in this slide. And so now we'll have our wonderful Sue Griffiths with us, and she'll share with us her knowledge and what she would like to share with us based on this topic that we're discussing today. Welcome, Sue.
Hi. Lovely to see everyone. It's been a while. Little note about myself. I was born in New Zealand, and I started sewing when I was about 10 or 12, and garments. Now, New Zealand's not a fabric manufacturer, so all the sewing, all the fabric, we just assumed came from overseas. It did. Then when I was about 22, I moved to Papua New Guinea. Now, Papua New Guinea, obviously also not a fabric manufacturer. I was teaching there. But you could get fabric often in the Chinese stores, so definitely of Chinese origin, but that's what you could get. And like often it was good quality cotton, and printed with New Guinea motifs. So there was no doubt about it that there was enculturation going on. Then I moved to Australia because I married, and life progressed. And I've still got a really big interest in sort of what's happening, because I love stuff that speaks of New Zealand, and that didn't happen when I was young. The books we read, they were from America and the UK, a lot of them. The fabric came from elsewhere. It was like we didn't have that voice. So I was really excited when some fabric companies started doing New Zealand prints, and because I'm in Australia, Australian-based prints. And this is something quite interesting. Then I met Miriam about 10 years ago and started looking at the African fabrics. Can you flick over the slide, Lisa, so that we can see the selvages? And I was looking at how do we know about supply chains? And these are just some of my fabrics, and I just zinged through and went, okay, let's have a look at what you actually see on a selvage, because people say, oh, if you want to know where it's from, look at the selvage. It's like, okay, I'll look at the selvage. Now, the ones at the bottom, these were from Miriam, Print Super Nana Holland Wax, Veritable Wax Super Remo, guaranteed printed by Traditional Collection Wax, guaranteed wax block prints Hitar Jet. So they're all different. I noticed that on yours, Lisa, the ones that you said were low quality had waxy. Like they haven't actually used the word wax, they said waxy. Whereas all of these say wax. So I think that I'm just surmising here that perhaps if it says a wax print or wax on it, it has to be made by the wax process. Then on the top, I went, oh, this is really interesting. Actually, what's on the selvage? Because the next one was, I said, they're bringing out Australian prints. And the one it's above the red and black one. It says, designed by Ruth Stoneley, M&S Textiles Australia, printed in Korea. And I went, well, there you go. Someone's actually telling you something about the supply chain. The one above that is from New Zealand, and it says Moko 100% cotton, tells you nothing, really. Moko is just the pattern. It doesn't even tell you the producer or who printed it. The one above that, Bulgura Australia, Bush Tucker by Julia Nabangara. This is where you're getting Indigenous prints, and once again, the designer is there. Now, what you know about these Aboriginal Indigenous prints, if it says the designer, you know that designer's getting royalties. So the selvage does tell you that something's going back to the original designer, and I reckon that's very important. And you'll notice that the one above that, the Birds of Aotearoa by Ellen Giggenbach, exclusively for Nutex, 100% cotton, well, that is telling you who the company is, Nutex, and who the designer is, Ellen Giggenbach. So, like, you're getting more information. And the one above that is an Australian one, Jocelyn Proust. Once again, she's the designer, exclusive to Spotlight. Spotlight's sort of like the equivalent to Joann's, as in it's the bigger fabric company known for cheaper fabric. And the one above that is a British one, like a print, Regency Sussex by Christopher, like whatever his name is, and it's got a lot of information on it. And what I thought was, because I was, when Miriam asked me to go on this, I was doing a quick Google of anything that I hadn't, like everything I hadn't thought of, most things I hadn't thought of. And they were saying, look, the SKU code, that's the stock, that's the code that companies use to keep track of stock, should tell you a lot. And I went, yeah, but it's not on there. And so it's got a number. So I tried SKU number, and I tried some of those ones with numbers, and I wasn't getting anything. I went, oh, this isn't helpful. And I thought, well, actually, there's no reason why you couldn't have a barcode on your fabric, which actually tells you. Like the New Zealand one, who designed it, designed by Ruth Stoneley, or the Australian one, sorry, designed by Ruth Stoneley, who is the company, M&S Textiles Australia, and where it was printed. That would actually tell you quite a lot. And as consumers, we'd like to know. Then can you just flick over the next slide, Lisa? I also looked up a few articles. Now, if you want to read them, they're quite interesting. This was in Selvage magazine, and it was talking about West African fabric, and that was anyway, it was an interesting article. You can read it yourself. Flick over to the next one, please.
All right. Okay.
And this one was huge. Don't read it if you don't feel like going through 75 pages with a big cup of coffee. But it was really interesting because it was saying, how can Africa build a sustainable textile industry? So if you want to read that one, I went, oh, this is so interesting. I really enjoyed it. Okay, and I think there was another article earlier. Okay, I'm not going to go through these 75 pages. No, this was a quilt I made with Miriam. Oh, can you flick over?
Moonrise.
Next one. Yeah, these are just some of my quilts. This one was one I made with Miriam's fabric, because there are African shops, places selling textiles now, but when Miriam started, there certainly weren't in Australia. So I think Miriam's done a great job in advertising African textiles to the world. So this is one I made. It's just a little 9 patch, but it's very cute. And using these lovely fabrics. I'll just go through my quilts, Lisa. Can you do the next slide? Thanks. Mm-hmm. This was another one using Miriam's fabrics. I've used I think Americans say bazine. I would say basin, but differences. And that was just using the African fabrics. This was as well. Miriam asked me to do, how do you do this applique? And this one I had fun with. All right. This was for February, Black History Month. And you can see that the African wax prints are creating the interconnected jigsaw. So you've got all these interconnecting loops. The people's faces are people who have contributed to contributed in a positive way to the world, and in particular to people of colour. I never know the things that are going to offend people in the States. I can never remember what are the right words to use or not. I'm sorry. Yeah. I apologise.
People of colour is appropriate. It's fine. Most people don't feel offended by that, I don't think. So it's all good.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry, but I remember an Aboriginal lady just going, for goodness sake, don't be so ridiculous. This isn't Australia. It's fine to say Aboriginal people. It's fine to say Indigenous people. But what the devil is this AITSC? Like it was the ATSIC acronym. She's saying, this is just ridiculous. Just don't even go there. And so anyway, and then there's quotes around it. But you can see some of the important people there. I'm sure even from this distance, you might be able to recognise some of the faces.
Yes.
Across time and across place and across nationality and across cultures. So I really enjoyed making that one. It was quite special to me. Is there one more, or can I stop talking about quilts? Awesome. Okay, back to the supply chain debate. Okay, what I was interested in is, if you think about it, there's the raw material. Africa produces cotton. Tick. And I'm talking about a lot of it's produced in West Africa. What happens to it? Apparently, and this is from my reading my 70 pages and various other articles, 10% is kept in Africa and turned into cloth. 90% is sent to Asia because they've got the ability. They've got the weaving mills and the spinning mills, the weaving mills, etc. They can make the greige cloth. They've got that ability, and you go, oh, why doesn't Africa? And that's quite interesting. That's an interesting question, which I'm not going to go into because I don't know the answer. But but a lot of these articles are asking that question and saying, well, Africa could. Why not? Africa could, because if you send your raw cotton away, and this is what Australia does with their, Australia is very much a primary producer, with mining and agriculture. You get the raw product, you send it away, someone else value adds, and then you buy it back and who profits? It's not you. And this is really what's happening with the cotton. So the cotton, fluff balls, bales of it, sent over to Asia, turned into greige cloth, which is the unprinted cloth. And then some of it is printed in Asia and some of it is sent back to Africa to the wax companies. So even like you go, oh, this is a high value wax company, like this is Blisco, we know that's a really good quality wax company. The greige goods are still produced in China. Don't think they're not. But then they're printed in the Netherlands. So you go, I think we have a slight problem here. I'm not seeing that Africa is benefiting apart from the exporting the raw cotton, a bit like Australia. Okay, so that's I just think that's so interesting. So then you look at the designers, and I really didn't get into this. Who is designing the patterns? Because that's something I'm really interested in. And I went, yeah, I'd really love to be able to see who is designing and what benefit they're getting. Because as Lisa and Cherie said, you go along to the store and something says it's African, but is it? So where is it being designed is another question. And then when the goods come back into Africa, whether they're from a wax print company in the Netherlands or in some of the other countries, or from Asia, they're then sent through Africa, many African countries, and so you've got distributors, and that's where you're finding your stuff in the markets. So what were the key challenges? You've got the authenticity versus the cost. And you go, oh, okay, this is a bit of a challenge. Because you can see the cost, it's written on there, it's all perfectly clear. But the authenticity, it's like, I don't know, I've got no clue. I can buy from Miriam because I know she sends me good quality prints, and that's fantastic. But how does anyone know where the cloth comes from? And you saw that with that one selvage which said, you know, like, this is who designed it, this is where it was printed, this is the company. And you go, well, why doesn't everything have that on? And I thought, well, really, the only thing we as consumers can do is essentially lobby and say, we want to see more. We want to see where our fabric's coming from. We want this transparent. Put a barcode on that selvage, and then we'll all know. And then whether you read it or whether you don't, I mean, that would be a simple change that could be made that would tell you who designed it, where the cotton came from, you know, where the greige goods were made, where it was printed, and the process that was used. You could have that information. There's no reason why not. So that was my takeaway from this. The sustainability and ethics. Now, this one was really interesting because that huge article, you know, the 75-page one, was like, oh, yes, headlines. I'll just read the titles. No, it was really interesting because it was saying Africa is in a really fantastic position to look at how to build a textile industry that is sustainable and is ethical. And I went, wow, yeah, they're right. Because it's not just the fabric, it's the electricity. You can have this, you know, you can have renewable electricity. What do you do with your water once it's got dyes all through it? You can have a system where that water gets clean before it's released into the released down the river, and you can build that in straight away. You know, like, because you're setting up a bigger industry, and so that was the electricity and the water and the goods. If you don't have to send your cotton to Asia to be turned into greige goods and then send it back, it's cheaper. You haven't got all that shipping. So it does make it cheaper, but it also makes it more ethical because transport, you've reduced that environmental pollutant. So that was like, I just went, oh God, this is such an interesting article. I'm loving it. Okay, then there's the cultural significance and naming, and that's getting back to, has someone just knocked off the pattern and gone, oh, this is African, as Charisse found that you go to a big store and it looks African, but someone's just knocked it off. And this happens with Aboriginal, Indigenous prints as well. You get stuff that's just been knocked off and, oh, you dot painting, that'll do. Yeah, that looks Indigenous, let's do it. And you go, no. And that's where seeing the designer's name tells you. You can look up the designer, where are they from, you know, what are they doing, and that would actually tell you. And the naming of the fabric as well, I think, is important. It's important to have that wax on it, you can see it. And all of this with this shift to localized production. Now, all of that big picture stuff is out of our control. We can't control what the African countries are doing as a whole to build a textile industry, you know. Right. But we can say, as consumers, we want to know. We want to know where our fabric is coming from. This is important to us. This is something that we want to do. So let's, and I think it's a collective thing. Let's collectively say, we want more on our selvages. We want a barcode. Thanks. and then we would actually have the information to let us make the decisions, as opposed to kind of guessing. Yeah, so I hope you've sort of found that interesting. I come from a maths background. I like my data, so I was very interested in that article. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, thanks, Lisa.
Oh, thank you, Sue. Yes, it is a lot, and like you said, I'm sure there are things that can be done. It's just a matter of the will, finances, and everything for industry to change from the way they market fabrics. I would imagine. It's not an easy answer, but I'm sure it can be figured out at some point. And but they was
Yeah.
very informative, and I'm glad you were able to find research and have the information available for whoever may feel the need to read about these from these articles. So thank you for your input. Appreciate it. Okay. All right. We had another one of your pieces.
Oh, yeah, that one was one where someone had said, oh, African fabrics are just so bright, and I went, yeah, they are, but they can still look sophisticated. Like let's just enjoy what we can do with them. So I've spent since getting fabrics from Miriam, I have spent a lot of time experimenting with what I can do with them. Can I go subtle? Can I go sophisticated? Can I go what can I just go all out bright, or and it's really interesting what you can do. So there's so much potential, and it doesn't seem to matter what you do, they always look great.
Exactly. Very versatile. They're beautiful and
very versatile. Yeah.
Yes.
And also very easy to sew too. I like the wax prints because they've got that little bit of wax, obviously.
Yeah, it makes them a little thicker, so it makes it a little easier to sew and have a little control with them.
Yeah, it's not floppy. No, I love it.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
no, I was
beautiful work, and I'm glad that you found a good source of getting good quality African fabric, and just like the rest of us who also are grateful for having a good, reliable, reputable source.
Absolutely. And credit to Miriam, because she had to build up that reputation. Initially, I remember people saying, oh, it's just Chinese, and it was like China, Asia, Korea, and so on. They're the ones who have built up their India. They're the ones who've built, and Bangladesh. They've built up their textile industry, and that took a government going, what can we do? Let's support this industry until it can live on its own. And I do think that country-wise, that's what's needed. A country needs to say, we're going to put the resources behind this, like growing up a child, until the child can stand on its own. But once it can, then you've got an industry. So I look forward to the day. I look forward to the day where you can sort of say, well, this has been grown in Africa, spun and woven and printed, dyed and printed in Africa. Here you are. I really look forward to that day for wax fabrics. It would be wonderful.
Yes, thank you, appreciate it. And next we have our very own Miriam Gladadima Benson. Welcome, my dear.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Great topic you're moderating here, and everyone has had so much to say, from the emotional, personal, statistical point of view, our feelings about the fabrics. And I'll get into my slide first. And mine is just my journey. I want to take you back to how it was when I started, some of the changes that I've seen, the things that I've observed. And I'm going to end the session, my section with something that I have up my sleeve that I've been investigating that has brought some new knowledge, about what's happening with African wax fabrics. So this was one of the first collections that I was able to pull together So, I've told you over time that our market, the African wax market, is unregulated. There's a lot of monopoly. For instance, in Ghana, Vilisco has monopoly. Vilisco has monopoly, and the ATL as well. ATL has been passed into Ghanaian government hands, so I'm not sure the financial backing behind it, but it's being operated by the Ghanaian government. I think that's a recent development, if I'm not mistaken. But every other mill in Ghana is part of the Vilisco empire. Now, they also had mills in Nigeria, which about 3, 4, 5 years ago, they shut down because of some of the challenges that Sue noted: infrastructure, foreign exchange, manufacturing. You have the raw cotton, but there's no way to process it into greige, So all of these have been stumbling blocks due to some economic decisions that were made in the 90s. Indigenous textile mills that used to produce these fabrics were shut down. They just dwindled. They couldn't keep up with importation, exportation, foreign exchange, taxes, and stuff like that. And over time, they just died out. So it's free playing field. Like Sue said, we will grow the cotton, export the cotton, and then it becomes whoever can takes the unprinted fabrics. A lot of it is printed in Asia, and then it is brought back into Africa and it is sold in the markets. This gap came about when the indigenous mills died and Vilisco prices became out of reach of the average Nigerian across the West African board, because the West African countries are the main consumers of the wax prints. So that gap became so evident. And all of a sudden, we found ourselves without a source for African fabrics, for the wax print especially, because we're so used to it. We developed a whole culture and tradition around the wax prints, and all of a sudden there was a gap. And that was when independent manufacturers who didn't have the clout or the history, the heritage of the Vilisco companies, they started producing, and it became a free-for-all. So that's just some background. And one of the downsides of that is you do not have continuity. Vilisco is about the only brand, of course, that has had continuity right from when they started in the 1800s. The closest second would be High Target. High Target is, if you look at the local market, High Target is seen to be on the higher end of affordable, but still affordable. And they also have had a long run, but it's owned by Asians. So one thing I feel kind of uncomfortable with is when it comes to wax prints, authentic, I'm not sure what it means in the context of wax prints. The origin of what the wax print is not authentically African. The production for decades has not been authentically African. For the period that it was authentically African, it dwindled far too quickly, And so, and that is why you will find in anything I say with Quilt Africa, I hardly say authentic. I rather tell you it's good quality. Because even me, I don't know what authentic African fabrics mean. If you ask me, my response to you about authentic African fabrics would be our indigenous fabrics, the Adire, the Bogolan, and the other types of fabrics that we have. To me, that is authentic African fabrics. But when it comes to the wax print, I don't know what it means for wax print to be authentic. I know what it means to be good quality, and I know what it means to be controlled to some extent by Africans, but I don't know what it means to be authentic. So next slide, please, Lisa. So this is one of the collections that I created, and then it has disappeared from the market. I remember being so excited about that collection because it was beautiful, everything about it was perfect, but it had a run and then it disappeared. And so you find in the Quilt Africa store, it's always a game of like walking on stilts or on a tightrope, trying to always find the combination of fabrics that are just baseline good quality. So that's what I look for. I do not concern myself with where it's from, who has the higher market share and all of that. I look at the brand. Are they good quality? In fact, I think for the past few years, that has just been my only consideration. Is it good quality? Because for it to enter into the market, it means at the very least that some Africans are benefiting from the importation, either bringing it in bulk into the country or selling it as retailers in the market. So, like Sue said, it's complex. And sometimes there's really nothing you can do. There's really nothing you can do about the big picture. You just do what you can in your own little corner. But I have some good news, and I'll be sharing that at the end. Next slide, please. So this is all that we offer, and there is a whole range of brands. I do not know the source of some of the brands, like I said, so I don't go crazy. So I don't promise you what I cannot deliver. I focus on the quality. Is it good quality? Is it good for quilters? Is the color fast? Is the thread count good? And all of that. So that's what I focus on. So I fundamentally, I want you to understand African fabrics by itself, by its source, its history, its origin, is not authentically African. So I don't want you to get hung up on, oh, it's this, is that, The only thing we try to maintain is the wax process. We are very big on the wax process. For us, that is our authentic. It has to be produced not by screen printing, where you just put the designs on and the underside usually is white. We want it waxed. We want to not be able to tell. We can tell, but we want it as close as possible, the right and the wrong side. So to an African, if you ask authentic, that's probably what they'll tell you, that wax process. Next slide, please. So like I said, authentic is adire to me. Authentic is my Tangale traditional wear, which is woven in strips. So authentic African fabric is the fabric of each and every tribe and culture in Africa. That's the only thing I feel we can attach the word authentic to. And it's not very popular for quilting, and I've made some attempts in the past to introduce this indigenous fabrics, to look through and say which of the fabrics are friendly for quilting. A lot of the African fabrics, authentic indigenous ones, you actually would find it difficult using it for everyday quilting. They are stiff, they are thick, they are like really woven, and it will be difficult to maneuver. And so you find that the easiest ones to use are adire, the indigo, and I'm making some effort to introduce that into the market. But like everything you find in Africa, there is so little regulation. And so it's a job trying to look for, everybody that produces it is authentically Nigerian or authentically Ghanaian or authentically Malian, but now you have to sort through, sift through, and see who is giving, who is carrying the excellence of the craft that was handed down and is not blinded by profit, or just shortcuts and all of that. So I still have to sift through. And because sometimes it takes a whole lot, I start and I pause because I have to catch my breath, So next slide. So this brand was part of the Velisco group that was milling and producing in Nigeria. And I had fun with it because it was kind of like midway between wax prints and European prints, because of course it's European, but they toned it down. They toned the Africanness down and made it a little bit more inclusive, and it was really good quality, fast, excellent, but it was not wax, but it was good. The quality was quite high, So now they've shut down. Nobody with their clout has risen to take over that space. So the vacuum is there. Next slide, please. And this one is just to show the varieties of fabrics that you can find. So in any one bundle of 5 or bundle of 10 or bundle of 20, 15, whatever it is you get from the store, you would find that they are a variety of colors. And this is the anniversary bundle, I think, that we had for last year and 2 years before. And what I tried to do here was just show you the range of fabrics that we have in the market. You have the Bazin, you have the excellence from Velisco, and then you had a variety of the wax prints that, I find in the market in colorways like we normally do, and all of that. And I just wanted to show that. And, the interesting thing, Bazin is now disappearing from the market because the African environment is heavily dependent on so many things. And in this case, foreign exchange. Foreign exchange is becoming out of our reach. So a lot of stuff is becoming out of our reach. With Bazin, because the foreign exchange is so high, the dollar to naira rate is so high, the differential is so much. The people that bring back in the fabrics. I don't know if I'm sure I've explained Bazin to you. Bazin is an African technique. But the production, the modernized production, does not happen in Africa. You get the cotton, you have the technique, and then you take it out to industrialized nations, and they produce it according to how it was done traditionally, and they bring it back. Almost everything in Africa operates that way. It's the African inspiration, is the African methods in some ways, but we do not have the industrial capacity to produce it for the modern market. Next slide, please. Now, this is Bogolan. This is now indigenous Malian fabric that has found its way to wax prints. So now this is the trend that is happening. Rather than random prints designed by the Dutch or designed by whoever, they are now taking patterns and prints that are African, and they are making them into African wax prints. So this here is Mali. This is Bogolan, a Mali company, because the indigenous ones, you can't really, honestly, you cannot even really use them without some edits, without some improvements for this market. The colors are not fast because we use trees and barks and sand to dye, you know. So without some edits, you really cannot use indigenous fabrics. Even us is strictly restricted now to ceremonies and festivals that happen once in a while. Then you see people bringing out the indigenous ones that they use. And so to meet the demands of this modern market, people are now taking those patterns and they're using the industrialized methods and they're producing them. And this comes at a very high price point, because for this, the copy is not to the standard of the regular wax print. It is to the standard of Bogolan, of the stripped pieces, which is quite thick and heavy. Very good thread count, tightly woven. So this comes at a higher price point, but people don't mind because you can have Bogolan for everyday use, you know, as opposed to just having it as a historical textile. Next slide, please. Yeah, so same thing here. Next slide, please. Same thing here. Just keep going. I'm looking for something, Lisa, sorry. Aha. So now, what this photo, when I first started Quilt Africa, I discovered some, in fact, that was what really made me bold, because there was a lady that I came in contact with. She was the one producing the fabrics. And her designs were not Velisco, her designs were not heritage, her designs were uniquely hers. I never saw her designs anywhere else in the market, you know, and I think by the time I met her, she maybe had like less than 10 runs, collections. By the time I met her, I think she had like 2, 3, and then she also disappeared from the market. And I think at that period, that was in maybe 2000. Yes, 2000, 2018, 19. That was another dark period for African wax prints, because there was kind of like a shakeup. And that was when there was such an infusion of wax prints from China, which were every which way. They didn't care. You know how sometimes manufacturers feel because you like it, you'll take anything. Much like what Cherise was saying about Joanne's, that you go in and you find, and Lisa as well, you find that it's not even, there's nothing apart from the pattern, there's nothing African wax print about it. So they were bringing in all sorts of things. And so she was creating a market for herself, you know, and then all of a sudden, because of the pressures of what it takes to produce and do business, she just dwindled, she just died out. But I was really excited about her because she was doing everything by herself, design, manufacture, bringing it, and she couldn't do it here. So it was outsourced, you know, but it was working. At least we had someone here, you know, that was doing all of that. And this was because this is Kathy. Kathy was, this bundle on the cutting mat was the first ever set of bundles that I put together for Quilt Africa. Kathy was my very first customer in 2017, you know, and she bought that. And I think that was like the last batch. And after that, it just disappeared. I couldn't find it anymore. So that broke my heart, you know, and that made me realize the gap, the level of the gap, you know, the depth of the gap that was in. Next slide, please. I think I'm coming to an end with this. So yes, so the same bundle, and she created that and she sent that to me, you know. So next slide.
That's it.
Oh, that's it. Okay, so I think we can stop share now and see how we can just round up this conversation by pulling together everything that each one of us have said. And I'm going to end by saying this. I believe that the dark years of what kind of fabrics do we have? Why are there no Africans? Why is it not the indigenous people? Why is it from China, from India? I was walking by the other day and I was so shocked to see beautiful, this was like maybe 2-3 years ago anyway, beautiful fabrics. And naturally I entered into, and to my shock, I saw an Indian man selling. I didn't know how I felt about it, but I think I was low-key offended. You know? But the fabrics were beautiful and the quality was not bad. But I was offended, because I felt, how did we get here? Yes, we know that, oh, please don't tell me the fabrics. I know it's not ours, but it's ours, right? So how did we get to a point that an Indian will open, and he had multiple shops, would open multiple shops and he's selling wax prints? No offense to India or anything. It was just that personal feeling of heritage, of thinking about when I used to go to the markets with my mom and I used to see Africans, and how at least Velisco was catering to us. They were catering to us.
Yeah.
They were sensitive about our whatever was going on in the African countries, and they were catering to us. So it was like ours. And then all of a sudden we have this foreigner who just knows we love fabrics and has come up and is bold to put his face on it. So that's where I think Velisco has lasted so long. They are very smart, very good business people. They were just behind the scenes, but they were feeding us what we wanted to be fed. So I never bought from him. And over time, I don't think I was the only person who felt like that, because he closed down. He's no longer in the market. Just that affront. And it brings the pain of what Sue said. What portion of all of this belongs to the Africans? And to be honest with you, I had some guilt with Quilt Africa, because I felt I was now part of the lying wheel, if you like, part of the fake wheel of wax prints. And I struggled quite a bit. But after a point, I said, if I don't enter the game now to understand what is happening, how can I ever make a change? I can't be on the sideline getting upset, not understanding what it takes, what is happening. And these 9 years that, I've been running Quilt Africa, I understand so much more. And I'm in a stronger position now to be a voice and to make a change. And all of that is because of your support and because of your trust, And that brings me back to, for some reason this year, I started out just investigating what is happening in the markets. Because I believe I've said, like in the block of the month or so, I've spoken about how I'm noticing some changes, some changes in, and I'm thinking, if we let this thing go on, a time will come when we won't have anything that is good enough for anybody, and I started making some inquiries, and I was happy to discover that even in Nigeria, you're beginning to have boutique manufacturers, small scale manufacturers who are using the cotton from Nigeria, processing it and producing. And that made me so happy. In fact, that's what I've been doing, I think, for the past few weeks since this year began. I've just been looking and I've been investigating and I've just ruminating. That all that information is just percolating in my head and I'm thinking, But imagine if I had allowed the imposterness of all of this to have stopped me from Quilt Africa way back. I wouldn't even be in a position now for the information to make any meaning to me, or even to think about how can I best use this information, So I think the crucial thing about this is authentic sourcing or ethical sourcing as it is in its purest form does not exist in Africa. It actually doesn't exist. Because for it to exist, certain things must be in place, and those things are not in place, But like Sue said, how can we change that? Sometimes we don't start from the big picture. We don't start guns blazing, but there's ways that we can begin to make a move. And so that 9 years into Quilt Africa, 18 years into Quilt Africa, we would be having a different conversation about this topic. And that is what I am looking towards. That 9 years from now, when Uncut Threads, we come back, we circle back again to the topic of ethical sourcing, it's going to be a different conversation. And I really appreciate what Sue did. The supply chain, so important. You have to start from somewhere. It might be at great personal cost. It might be at a higher price point. But the important thing is to get started, and to have a long game plan. Just bringing out those statistics and those data, it makes it, they say when the problem is kind of like half solved, because now you just have to look for a solution, and I just love everybody's perspective. Sharice and Lisa are letting me know that it matters. It matters for us to get it right, because is offensive on some level. It gets, you become offended about it.
I think, Miriam, we've talked before about the impact of cultural appropriation and the fact that economics and almost like thievery of our culture, of our music, of our dance, of our fabrics. So I appreciate being on this journey with you, because you are so open about, I've learned so much just from this session. You're so open about what is real and what we think is real. So yeah, I'm with you.
Yes,
I appreciate the being able to expound on the authenticity. For us as Westerners, when we see in the big box stores and we get it and we know that it's not real, so to speak, but if we know it comes from a reputable source and we get the quality that's good, and I'll speak for me. I feel like it's my mindset that it's real, it's authentic, it's good quality. It came directly from Nigeria, so it's authentic, it's real. Whereas the big box stores that have the cheap salvages and the cheap quality stuff, and the print is not through and through, it's not authentic, it's not real wax and Cara wax, we can feel the difference. But thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
I also I completely agree with everything. I also just want to say about global supply chains is we live in a connected world, and I see the world as one. And I go, well, it's great that there are big factories who have got the wherewithal to print this fabric, because otherwise we wouldn't have them. And I'm kind of going, like I wouldn't have Australian prints, I wouldn't have New Zealand prints if they weren't printed overseas, because we don't have the facility here. But I still want them. I really want them, because they're my voice and my people and my place and all of that. So I kind of go, I'm fine with Australian fabric that's printed in a different country, especially if I know what's gone on. Like I know that the person who designed it is getting some royalties, tick. I know that it's an Australian company, tick. Whoever owns it, probably not Australia. I know where it's been printed. And I would like to know that the conditions in the factory where it was printed are humane, like it's just, I don't want to be supporting sweatshop labour, for example. And that it still speaks with my place and who I want to be, like my voice. So I think I actually, I don't have a problem with stuff being printed in a country who's got the facilities to print it. I just think we need to look at them and go, oh, how did they do that? Let's do it too. Let's
agree with you. The beautiful part about Quilt Africa Fabrics is that now that you've been in for 9 years or so, you have a platform, right? So you've been selling, you've been in the market, you've been observing and understanding and how it all works and whatnot, and so you have a voice in your local community that can speak on what may be wrong or what could be better or how you can maybe implement change, on your small scale, there.
Mm.
Yeah.
Because you have direct
Yeah.
access and you're becoming known in your local community. I'm just speaking what I'm thinking. I don't know for sure, but
Yeah.
so you have a
And also
platform.
you've got the power of the tribe to make a block,
Yeah.
essentially. A block of people who are all writing to their fabric manufacturers saying, we want more information on the selvage, give us a barcode, this is what we want on it. We want to be able to scan it with our phones and say, I know where this fabric comes from. And you've got that power of having people who would be willing to do that. Here's the manufacturers. Let's all write to them. Let's all say we'd like to see this. Because that's the change that we little people can make.
Yes.
And the
We can't
technology is
change.
different too.
That's
It's like
really important.
from back in the day, now we have technology, like you said, scan it on your phone, barcodes, those
Yeah.
kinds of things.
Can tell us everything.
Yes. So just to double back on what Sue said. So I met with someone who said he had worked with Velisco and he was so disappointed, because what they basically do is kind of like pick the brains of Africans, but they don't really have much sway. So when they kind of like say, okay, this part, maybe say the cola nuts, how do you think they will feel about this cola nuts? Oh yeah, it's a good looking cola nuts. And then so they take that concept and that feedback back to Holland, where they have their team of designers, and they design that and then they push it back, And I know that honestly, production within the African context or particularly Nigerian context can be very difficult because there are a lot of things that, are not right, but like we all agree, it's just those baby steps. Sue mentioned she remembers when we were talking about starting 10 years ago in 2016 in December, and it was such a huge problem for me. I keep saying that if it were not for Sue, I really don't think Quilt Africa would have existed, because to me, the problems were so I was in my Nigerian mind and I couldn't see how all of this could happen. And to be honest, everything I was afraid of, I encountered it. That's the truth. But by the time I got stonewalled, I already had people that were cheering for me. Sue was cheering for me. There were a few, I think must have met Brenda by then. So people were cheering for me and failure was no longer an option. By the time I saw how difficult, things were, failure was no longer an option. I just had to move forward. So like she said, with the power of the tribe, and the cultural difference would be that I am not much of a voice in my community when it comes to textiles. But with the tribe and the force of the tribe, that's where the real change would come from. And within our African context, you make change from the inside out. You begin to do what you know to do, and then it catches on. And then people pick it up, but you don't really kind of like start from the outward. You don't start outwardly, So imagine if we said, okay, this year, we're going to go to one of these boutique manufacturers and we are going to produce. And even if it comes at a slightly higher point than what the market offers, the tribe says they will support it. Now we're beginning to make progress, because the infrastructure of that boutique manufacturer, I cannot imagine what he's going through with the way power, like in a week, you have power just go off. In a week, you would have like up to 24 hours of no power. For a manufacturer, that's a lot.
That's a loss.
Somehow that's a huge thing he has to take on. And what happens? That loss is transferred to the customer, to the consumer. So it's a lot, but it's now change that I can see is possible. And then when we get to that point, then we can begin to talk about ethical sourcing, sustainable markets. And then we can begin to talk about authentic African fabrics. But until then, there's still some ways to go, But that is not to say that who am I, like my primary supplier for the longest time was a young boy who was working with his mom. She was a widow. The husband died. She had like 6 children to train. She didn't know what to do. She started selling fabrics. And so all his life, he had seen his mom selling fabrics. And so when I met him and I was buying like 5 bolts of fabrics per time, because I started with the 5 fat quarter bundle. That was all I could afford. I couldn't afford more than that for variety. And, I spoke with, I every day I would go to the markets and I'm walking from one stall to the other. This is what I'm trying to, and they never even understood what I was trying to do, but I explained anyway. This is what I'm trying to do. How can we work together? I don't really want to buy on credits, but I want you to kind of like maybe let me know when your final pieces come, so that I can have first pick, so that those 5, when people see it, they know, oh, it's the best 5. We can't live without this 5, so that I can grow that way, and he was so accommodating. By the time I started buying from him and people were demanding for more, 10, I couldn't afford 10. I couldn't afford 10 pieces of fabrics. And so I told him, you know what you're going to do for me? You're going to cut the 6 yards into 3 yards or 2 yards, just so that I can have more variety. That was all I could afford. Oh, it took some doing. I would go, I'll beg, I'll call, I'll text, I'll WhatsApp, eventually he agreed. And so I'd go to the market, and I told him, I know you may not find buyers, but just keep it. I'll come back. I promise you, if I take 2 and pay, I'll come back, take another 2 and pay, and come back and take another 2 and pay, And he agreed. And that was how all of a sudden I was able to have more variety, of fabrics. And you won't believe that from that cutting, he began to have a market for the smaller yardage.
Oh.
Because people who were small sized didn't need up to 6 yards to make clothes. So they could just come and pick the 4 yards or 2 yards or 3 yards for a short dress, for a shift, for, one thing or the other. And so it opened up a whole market for him. The other day I went into the market, the last time I was there buying for the block of the month. And I heard a lady, she was telling someone, come and see this guy. He's the only person in this market that can sell you 3 yards. She was saying it with so much, and I started laughing. And he was there, and we locked eyes, and we started laughing because we knew the genesis of how that came about, And so Chimeze is now grown. He is now a father of 2 with his own shop and another shop. He has 2 shops now outside of his mother's shop. So it might not be ethical the way you're thinking about, but when I'm speaking, I also try to help you to understand our cultural differences, our economic differences, and the landscape that is different. So yes, we may not do all of that. It may come from China. It may come from this, it may come from that, but you have to think about the individual lives. You have to think about his widowed mom who has put all her children through university, which, as Nigerians, that is such a big deal. We love education. She has married off all her sons because the men pay for the wedding. She has married off all her daughters, and she has and her son now has her shop has birthed 2 other shops, and he's well on his way to a 3rd. So I want you to think about that. And then, of course, there is me. You do not, I say it, but you don't see my story the way I'm sharing Paul's story to you. You don't see where I was. This is the first time I'm telling you that I couldn't even afford more than 5. you don't see my story the way you see Paul's story, that I can tell you this is what his mother had to do. But I was in very much the same space where this has totally changed my life, you know. So before you get hung up on theories and philosophies and preferences of how you would want it to be, I just want you to understand that here in Africa, your buying is changing a lot of lives. It is touching a lot of people, from the people I employ to the people I buy from, to the second supplier that I've had to get over time. It is touching lives. We are not where we want to be, but oh Lord, we are making such an impact. You know, not to mention the other things that we're doing in Quilt Africa that don't have anything to do with fabrics. The orphanages we go to, the toilets we're planning to build, the things I'm able to do now as an economic, capable person,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm.
So there's a lot that happens, you know, so I just want you to bear that in mind. Let's not get hung up in the politically correct language that defines all of this. A lot happens, you know, as well.
Can I add on to that, Miriam? That not only when people like myself or like any of the other quilters make a quilt with African fabric, put it in a quilt show, talk to their local quilt guild, people become aware of African wax prints who maybe weren't before.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed over the time that Miriam's been selling fabric, that from nothing in Australia, and there were no African prints in Australia. There are shops that have opened because now I've been going, oh, I went to the quilt show and someone's selling African fabric. Oh, there's another supplier. And so I've actually seen the growth of the availability of African wax prints in Australia. And I firmly believe that that's due to the fact that Miriam's been selling it and enabling other people to go, oh,
It's possible.
You know, it's possible. I'm an
There's a
African in
demand for it.
Australia. I can bring fabric in and sell it, which is what one shop is. And it's creating a demand. So if you get your quilts and you go, oh, this isn't good enough for a quilt show, if you put it in anyway, and people are seeing those wax prints and going, oh, because if I put a quilt in a quilt show, I always say with fabric from Quilt Africa Fabrics, Miriam Galadima Benson, Quilt Africa Fabrics in Nigeria. I always put that on so that people can go, oh, I'll take a photo of that label. I'll do that too. You know, like I'll have a look, because I believe that that's how, in a way, you know, it's not only growing Miriam's business, it's also growing these other businesses. It's also making people go, I want, you know, like I want that too. And the bigger the voice, the bigger the benefit. And, you know, genuinely, there's no reason. People look at South Korea and go, oh my God, how did they do that? They were in the mud after the Korean War, right? There was just mud. They built a textile industry. They built a manufacturing industry. And over the course of 20 years, it is not impossible. It can be done. So, but it does take government will. It takes vision. And it takes people like us to sort of say, that's what we want to see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's no reason why it can't be done elsewhere, which is one of the reasons why Korea is quite popular in some of the other Asian countries. They've never invaded anyone, and they have shown that it can be done. You can come from the mud to economic success, and you can do it. It's not, oh, well, they just had this. They had government support. I would agree that was a crucial factor, and they had vision, but it can be done.
It can be done. I absolutely agree with you. And you know, so you know, this month, February, Quilt Africa is officially 9 years old. And that's why I've gone a little back into history to just share some of the things, you know, that have happened, you know. But one thing that I wanted to say is that we have grown we can all see that we have grown as a tribe. We have, initially we started as, oh, Miriam she needs an income. And then all of a sudden I realized there's so much information to share. This is a way we can all come together, irrespective of our heritage. This is a way of just expanding our creativity. Now we are getting bigger, we're getting more conscientious, maybe.
Mhm.
And now there's another shift I can see, you know. And so I'm thinking, am I up for it? Because I try not to enter into anything lightly, because I know it's never it's never easy. So I'm thinking I can see in the horizon there's a pivot to be made. Am I up for it? You know, that's the next level of where we are going as. And I was having a conversation with Sue, and she said, oh, you're doing all these things. I said, Sue, I'm just seeing myself as a map maker. I'm just plotting maps. I'm just plotting the ground. It could be that it's someone else that is going to build on all of these things that we're doing here, we're doing there. The things we're doing is not bringing me millions, but it's important to have that stamp on the ground, because that automatically means that it's easier for someone who is going to feel this vacuum when I'm no longer there, you know. And so for me, that's how I'm looking at it. You know, starting the Quilters Guild in Nigeria, thinking about this, thinking about that. You just want to have that footprint in place, so that, or that blueprint, so that someone can come and, you know. And I'm seeing, when it comes to ethical sourcing, when it comes to sustainability, when it comes to the manufacture of prints here in Africa, there's something we can do. And so I'm exploring what is the next move to make sure that this conversation does not keep being a conversation up in the air. How can we bring it down and make it a reality? You know, so yeah.
So
that's
and just, I'd like to add that you have created a tribe that is in solidarity with you. The stories that you share touch us in a way that wherever we are in the world, we feel connected to your local, to your family, to your community. And being with you, we can support you. We can help cause, work with you, cause that synergy to make change. And you already have had such a impact. I mean, it's just wonderful to hear the stories of the now next generation of fabric vendors, owners, not working for somebody else, making their life better for their own families and their community. So it's a domino effect. And I'm in it because I want to feel connected, and I want to do more for others. And ways that we can do that is by supporting your efforts into bringing these fabrics to our own quilting guilds and quilting communities, like Sue said. So we're here for you.
And honestly, I appreciate that. That's what keeps me going.
As I was listening to your story, the story about the gentleman, I keep coming back to, and when you talk about how it was for you in the beginning, just to only able to afford a small amount of yardage, and I just keep thinking, every time I think about you and your story and what I know about it, don't despise the small beginnings, because look where, brought you from where you started into where you are now, and where you will soon go with the tribe behind you. And, and that's why we keep coming back, supporting your efforts and participating in your different events and things, because, it's important, because you're not only helping you and your family and your livelihood, you're helping people in your community. It's always a blessing.
Thank you so much, Lisa. You know, I'm so proud that we are not gathered for reality TV or for some kind of rubbish thing. You know, we're here to ground ourselves, to improve ourselves, to increase ourselves. And you know, it's said that it's when you're full that you overflow.
Mhm.
And sometimes your definition of full might not be a cup that is like absolutely full. It might just be finding a footing that will cause you to stand well and begin to overflow, you know, and just the knowledge of the tribe just behind me. It has pulled me through much more than you can ever imagine, not only business-wise, but personally in so many ways. Just knowing the force and the stature, you know, of our community is behind me. It keeps me going in ways, and I don't take it for granted. And I want to do right by this confidence that you have put in me. That is so important for me. I don't want you to look back and say, oh, I've been with Miriam with the Quilt Africa tribe for 10 years. And one day you hear one scandal about one thing. I want you to feel good, and, you know, I want you to be enriched as well,
Absolutely.
you know. So that means so much to me. And initially it looks like, oh, the support of the tribe was transient or it was fleeting. And I wasn't sure. I was never sure, you know. I was like, oh my God, what if, you know, but now in so many ways that you reach out, and like Lisa said, by just coming, you know, by us saying, oh, at 3 p.m. we're doing something, and people just show up. That is a lot.
Yeah.
That is so valuable, you know. And that is why I make sure that we do not gather for nothing. We have to gather for something, you know. And if in that gathering something, what now? I don't want to say divine, but something good and big comes out of it, you know, then it's our collective victory.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely.
And just to let you know, I just wanted to say that when Sue was saying she takes photos of, and she always does that, all her quilts in exhibitions. So I'm saving all the photos. I said, this is my like badge for when I'm old and gray. I'm going to like frame them and be looking at it on the wall. Like, oh yeah, that's from Australia. You know what we did, you know. Australia is the third highest base for Quilt Africa. Quietly, silently, after the US and Canada, then comes Australia. And sometimes when I look at the metrics, I'm actually surprised at the countries, you know, that may not maybe show up for stuff like this, but they're being captured, you know, by our data trackers and all of that. So yeah, I'm so excited and I'm so grateful, you know, and I know that the next time we have this conversation, it's going to be different. There's going to be more to say, and there's going to be like hope, and there's going to be a sense of ownership over these fabrics is not going to be in vain. We're going to have something tangible that we're going to hold on to and say, yes, this fulfills everything that we think and feel this fabric ought to be, you know. So I just wanted to end with that.
Well, thank you, ladies, for being my guest today. I wasn't sure what I was going to say or how it was going to go, but it worked out really well. And so, Sue,
Yes.
your knowledge, your vast knowledge, and Miriam, of course, your vast knowledge helped me and Therese get through this. So, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And you ladies have a wonderful day. And until next time, we'll see you when we see you. Have a
All
nice
right.
day, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you very much, and thank
Right.
you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
Yes, you as well.
Okay.
Whoa.